Story 1. A 15-year-old told me she wanted to join the army when she was older because she did not like being told what to do. Story 2. They won't arrest me. I'm homeless. Yes, they will. Do you not see the constant flow of police cars showing up here more than 3 times a week? Story 3. He told me he wanted to become a farmer because it seemed like an easy job. I think his only experience was from playing a farming simulation game on his phone. Story 4. When I was a stepmother to a teenage boy and caught him stealing money from us, I had his father take his phone away for a period of time. He flipped out before going to school one day and said, "What am I supposed to do in class?" I replied, "I don't know, learn. Listen to your own thoughts." He responded, "You try listening to your own thoughts." Actually, now that I'm saying this at this stage in the game, that's pretty unsettling. Story 5. I guess there are impoverished individuals in Jamaica, but they seem very happy. They are accustomed to their circumstances and do not appear to be hungry. They can always eat a coconut. We were both about 19 years old when I attended a party at her house. We had just met, and after our conversation, I wasn't invited back, which was fine with me. Story 6. I asked an intern to help me enter data into spreadsheets for an environmental project we had due soon at an environmental consulting firm. The intern responded, "I am going to pass on that work task because I don't see it as part of my career plan." Story 7. This person is only 2 years younger than me, and I was explaining how working full-time is the standard for an adult. They thought I worked 5 days a week because I'm good at that and insisted most people in the United States work only 1 to 2 days. They were trying to get my pity by suggesting I'm just an overachiever who loves work. That is not true. Story 8. I had a classmate when I was 17 whose father came to collect her from school one day. Oh no, he's come in the Porsche instead of the Range Rover. That's so embarrassing. Story 9. As a combat veteran, I was giving a talk to some students in a local junior reserve officers training corps class. At one point, it seems some of them were getting excited, and one student proudly said, "I can't wait to go overseas and shoot people." Recognizing this as a teaching moment, I laid it out for them. Leaving your family, your children, the uncertainty, the stress, the physical toll it takes on your body, restless nights, the feeling of being shot at, the moment your vehicle hits an improvised explosive device and your first thought is, "Okay, I'm still alive." Seeing your friend with whom you spent years training suddenly gone, and understanding what death truly means. By the time I finished, you could hear a pin drop. Story 10. Rich people have it harder than poor people because they are often more isolated and, therefore, lonelier. Story 11. A little girl asked me if I was a princess. I am a man, and at that time I was overweight and had long hair. I guess she was convinced that Maui from Moana is a princess. Story 12. A teenager once told me, "I don't understand why you don't have TikTok." I explained that I prefer to spend my time reading books, and they responded, "But why?" Their lack of understanding of alternative interests was quite surprising. Story 13. When I was young, I turned down many opportunities because I wanted to pursue a specific job. I was so focused on my own understanding of how the world worked that I sabotaged myself. I could have easily earned a good income in my early 20s. However, I was fixated on how I wanted to do things and how I expected events to unfold. I was out of touch. Story 14. A young person asked if I used a flip phone for work. I had to explain that I didn't just communicate with smoke signals. Story 15. I do not go to the doctor or dentist, so I do not need health insurance, said my 25-year-old stepdaughter when I advised her that at 26, she would need to have her own insurance. To provide more context, we were discussing therapy, which she wanted to pursue after a long conversation. However, she was hesitant to pay for it, and we, her parents, offered to cover the costs not covered by insurance. She is an independent adult. She moved out for college. For the first couple of years, she had healthcare visits when she came home, but then she decided she did not want to go anymore and refused. As a legal adult, we cannot control her decisions regarding healthcare. Story 16. If the lottery system has so much money, why can't they simply distribute a large check to everyone instead of requiring payment to participate? Story 17. I overheard my 19-year-old coworker say, I think I'm going to wait to get Botox until I'm older, like 25. I'm not sure what they think will happen in 6 years, but if they lay off the tanning beds and the vapes, they probably won't need Botox. Story 18. I have worked in education since 2008. The number of children who truly believe they will succeed in becoming professional athletes or social media stars is astounding. Story 19. I grew up in the South in the middle of nowhere. You know, the kind of place where the gas station is also the town hall and possibly a daycare? That kind of nowhere. Our town was so small that I graduated in a class of 35 people. That included 2 guys who didn't technically go to school, but they had been hanging around so long we figured, you know what, give them a diploma. They've earned it just by being there. They didn't even pave my road until I was about 13 years old. Even then, they only paved it about 3 houses past mine because not enough people lived further down the road to support the cost of paving the whole road. One night, like most southern teenage boys, we were out by a bonfire, drinking some beers we definitely did not legally purchase. We started talking about the world's richest people. This was back when we thought the Ask Jeeves guy was a real butler who just lived on the internet. Someone said, "Man, Bill Gates. That dude is loaded." Across the fire, from the shadows, someone yelled, "Bill who?" Like they'd never heard of him, which I get. We were in a town where some people probably thought microwaves were magic. Someone told him, "Bill Gates, man. He invented Windows." Now, to most of us, that made perfect sense. We got it. Microsoft Windows, probably 95 at that point, maybe 98, who knows. But not to this guy. He sat for a second, took a sip of his beer, looked around seriously and said, "Well, no wonder he's rich. I mean, if we didn't have Windows, we'd all just freeze to death. And here's the thing, I can't even argue with that logic. He's technically not wrong, but he's also very wrong. Maybe he's kind of a genius for coming to that conclusion on his own. I don't know. That's the South for you. This guy may not have understood one thing about computers, but he definitely understood the enormous importance of insulation and keeping warm." Story 20. My father died 7 months after a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. A friend asked why I was sad since I knew in advance that he was going to die. Felt cold and cruel. Story 21. It amazes me how many Reddit users under 30 complain on this platform about feeling old and used up, or that they believe it's too late to find another path in life. Apparently, feeling old is something young people experience. I am over 40 and feel like my life has just begun. Story 22. At the Christmas party, I was debating with my cousin's in-laws. I admit it was a mistake to engage in a debate with teenagers, but I was presenting facts that seemed to frustrate them. Their main argument was, "You don't know anything. How many Instagram and TikTok followers do you have?" They dismissed my point simply because I have around 100 followers on Instagram, all of whom I know personally, while they had thousands of followers liking their attention-grabbing photos. Story 23. It was a Reddit post, so I guess the author wrote it rather than said it. They thought that because I didn't pay to listen to music, I was pirating it, even though I clearly mentioned in my post that I watch music videos on YouTube or listen to the radio. They didn't understand that musicians distributing music in that format receive their income from advertisers rather than from subscriptions. The whole situation would have been hilarious if it hadn't been so sad that the younger generation thinks the only legitimate way to consume content is through subscriptions. They have no idea how to be frugal and find free and completely legal means to listen to their music. Story 24. Millennials often avoid taking responsibility for issues such as the housing market, environment, and economy, frequently blaming baby boomers instead. Story 25. In college, I had a friend who was looking for apartments near our campus. She came across multiple listings that were close by and under $1,000. While showing me pictures, she said, "Wow, look at this. $800 for this whole house." At first, I thought she was joking because I believed there was no way she could think that a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, newly built townhouse would be $800. I had to hold back my annoyance as I calmly explained to her that these listings were for bedrooms with shared common spaces in the house. She looked upset and disgusted by the fact that people would mislead others on the internet, luring them in with photos of the entire house and making them believe they could have it all. Not the smartest person, but she was nice. Story 26. What do you mean you don't have summer off? They make you work during summer? Yes, child. Adults don't get summer break. You know, when you go to the grocery store or the movies all summer, those people are working. I have to work just like them. The child was 17. Their mind was blown. Story 27. I was giving a student a reading test and asked if they enjoyed reading. They replied, "No, I don't like to read." During COVID, I was making TikToks while all the people were dying. No joke. It was shocking. Story 28. You need to learn to adapt, our new colleague said during a management meeting about her poor work ethic. Story 29. I'm not sure if it counts as being out of touch or just being incredibly naive, but I have to tell someone. Apparently, until he was 23, my cousin believed that islands floated on water. One day, I mentioned that we were going to a Greek island on vacation, and he got this big happy expression as he proudly said, "Did you know islands are actually stuck to the seabed? They don't float. Sometimes they have thousands of miles of rock below them." He looked so proud of sharing this groundbreaking fact. We were with some family members, and all of us exchanged looks that said, "Are you serious?" We replied that, yes, we knew. We had always known. Everyone does. It didn't shame him as much as it should have. Story 30. I had a new temporary employee tell me that he doesn't understand why I wouldn't provide my social security number over the phone to the power company in the staff break room. He laughed at me and said I was being too paranoid and that no one cares about a government number. Story 31. I had to stop using cursive at my last workplace because most of the staff, all under the age of 25, didn't know how to read it. Story 32. I voted for Trump as a joke because I didn't think he would actually win. Her name was Emily, and we are both sophomores in college. Story 33. I was once stuck sitting next to two kids on an airplane when they still served decent snacks. I was taking the chocolate out of my snack box when the girl next to me asked for it. She said her dad had told her that adults really didn't like those things, and she should have it since she was a kid. She also said reading books was a waste of time and only math mattered. I ate my chocolate and read my book. Story 34. Two examples come to mind. You've worked here for 8 years? Wow, that's a significant amount of time. Last year, on September 11th, my colleagues and I were discussing the events of that day when someone walked in and asked, "Why are you even talking about September 11th? I wasn't even alive then, and it's like ancient history. It's not relevant anymore." They built a new building. Story 35. America was viewed negatively by some as the worst country in World War II, according to numerous people, including my nephew. Another comment was, "The United States lost the Revolutionary War," coming from a British individual whose views made me seriously question the education system in the United Kingdom. Story 36. A young man in the shop at work said he went to a club and a performer spent the night with him, dancing and talking. He claimed, "I gave her my number. I think she really likes me." When we all laughed, he insisted, "I know that's what everyone says, but seriously, this one is different. She didn't call." Story 37. My niece and nephew come from a well-off family. "Is this your house? It's really small. Why don't you buy a bigger one? Your phone screen is cracked. You should get a new one. They aren't that expensive. You should ask your housekeeper to clean that up." Story 38. I told a couple of 18-year-olds that I do not have Instagram. They called me a liar and said that if I did not want to be friends, I should just say so. Story 39. I am not taking a job at Orange Theory. I have a college degree. This was said by an unemployed recent psychology undergraduate with restaurant and retail experience to me. Story 40. My 12-year-old nephew said, "You don't need to get me anything for my birthday. We can go shopping at the mall, or you can give me money. Have you been taught what anything means?" Story 41. Helen Keller was both blind and deaf. How did she learn to speak? There are numerous movies, books, articles, and historical accounts about her life. It's quite astonishing. Additionally, she was also in nursing school. Story 42. This came from my wife, who is not younger than me, but she thought that home equity was a bank account you can withdraw from. Not like a home equity line of credit, but a physical bank account that you can go to an ATM and withdraw cash from. I told her about how the unit above us sold for $40,000 more than we paid, so we probably have about $40,000 in equity. She said, "We should go out to celebrate." And I responded, "Why? We didn't sell the house." She looked at me and seriously told me, "Well, we can just take it from the money we just got." It took me a few minutes of conversation to realize she thought we had just received $40,000 deposited into our bank account. I love her dearly, but sometimes she can be a bit dense. Story 43. Someone last week said that people who rely on Social Security and public transit are parasites and selfish. This is an absolutely insane and unhinged perspective. Story 44. That pregnancy was sexual violence and that the maternal instinct was invented by the patriarchy. I am not even joking. A 22-year-old told me that last year. Couldn't believe my ears. Story 45. Just about everything a person under the age of 18 has ever said to me about politics has been nonsense, regardless of which side it aligns with. You don't pay taxes, you don't have a job, you don't have responsibilities, and statistically, you probably didn't even vote in the one election you were old enough for. Most of your information comes from social media platforms by equally unqualified individuals. I am not interested in what they think about anything. I have one little cousin who is obsessed with public figures and another who claims she will be on disability forever due to a condition she describes as time blindness. I do not need their input. Story 46. We had a young guest speaker at work who spoke to us about mental health. She advised us that if we felt unable to complete a task, we should inform our supervisors that we were not mentally equipped to handle it that day. For clarity, we are teachers, and her examples included lesson planning, grading, and communicating with students, the primary responsibilities of our jobs. Story 47. Recently, on this platform, a US member of Generation Z told me, "Generation Z refuses to work hard for a mediocre life." I think this sentiment is both understandable and completely out of touch with what life can be like for a human being on Earth. On one hand, the system in the United States and Canada is flawed. It is reasonable to be angry at stagnant wages, the increasing cost of living, the erosion of competent governance and individual rights. It is fair to want something better and to be upset about the current state of affairs. On the other hand, really? You refuse to work hard for a mediocre life? Tell that to someone living in poverty. Tell that to the people around the globe who live under oppressive governments or in war zones, earning far less than we do in the United States and Canada, getting by on their hard work and making do with what they have. I agree that things should be better for everyone. However, refusing to work hard for a mediocre life does not solve those problems. Life is not fair for many of us, and crossing your arms in frustration does not fix it. Story 48. He told me that he will never go to work and will instead make money by investing. I asked him where he would get the money for investing a large enough sum to live off. Story 49. My cousin, who is now 44, once said to me, "People in South America are so happy. They get to work in paradise at these cool resorts, and they are all smiling and love it." Yes, because everyone in South America works for resorts and earns American wages. Yet, they are often overworked for low pay. I saw a girl crying on a cruise ship because she hadn't seen her family in 2 years. Story 50. Hey Dad, why are you not afraid of planes? Didn't you and Mom, along with a group of others, have to run when they were crashing them everywhere? We live in Ohio. Story 51. The person didn't say it to me, but in this Sam Seder debate with young people, he asks a young woman if she believes in divorce. She responds that she does not believe in it and suggests that they can remove the right to divorce at a young age. Many misguided statements were made in this video, but I thought this one was particularly notable. Story 52. My brother believes that sick days should be illegal because he has never had to take one. He has never held a job that wasn't work from home. Story 53. I was talking to a kid at the dog park, and he asked me where I lived. I pointed to my van, and he said, "Why don't you sell that and buy a house?" Who's going to tell him? I live in San Diego. Story 54. You are considered unambitious if you are near or over 30 and earning $80,000 a year. I hope he is working as a barista at Starbucks now with his computer science degree. Story 55. I once showed a child an old wall phone that I still have. It was the first one we ever got that replaced the rotary phone in our house. He asked me how to take pictures with it. Story 56. My little cousin thought fast food jobs were easy. Then he got one to make his own money, but he quit within a week. Story 57. I work at a university. A 20-year-old student came to see me to ask if I would be his dissertation supervisor in the next academic year. I told him I couldn't, as I would be leaving at the end of the semester to work at another university. He looked me up and down with dawning realization and said, "Oh, right. Yeah, I guess you are retiring." I was 35 at the time. Story 58. It's not fair that just because he, as an industrial electrician, went to school and studied, he gets paid much more than me working as a barista. Story 59. The only people who do not live in houses are the poor. So condominiums, apartments, and million-dollar penthouses are for whom? Her mother taught her never to leave her parents' home to live in an apartment. Stay until you can afford a house. Many of us may never be able to move out, I suppose. Not everyone can stay with their parents for that long as an adult. Story 60. I want to go back to an easier time like the 1950s or 1980s, when things like this didn't exist, ignoring that many people did not have civil rights during those decades. Story 61. A teenage girl told me she wasn't worried about her exam results because she would just marry a wealthy man. She wasn't very happy when I asked her what would happen if she couldn't find anyone who wanted to marry her. Story 62. An adult in their teens assumed that I, an adult with a decade more experience, had never made my own money before. It's one of the most astonishing claims I have ever encountered, made without any basis. Story 63. My work colleague, a 22-year-old male who still lives with his parents, was confused about why I, a 32-year-old female, hadn't bought a house yet. I reminded him that I left home at 18 and haven't had the luxury of living with my parents to save for a house deposit. Story 64. I'm also pretty young, having just turned 20, and I'm in university on a scholarship with financial aid. I work to cover what my scholarship doesn't and various living expenses. My roommate during my freshman year was the child of a retired police officer from upstate New York. One time I came home tired from a double shift, as I was waiting tables at the time, and mentioned that I was exhausted. They suggested that I should just quit my job. Story 65. My oldest son was listening to music and said, "Hey Mom, is this Bob Marley?" It was Mr. Bombastic by Shaggy. Story 66. One of my son's classmates saw a picture of me with Ralph Macchio at a convention and asked, "Is that the guy from Cobra Kai?" Story 67. I asked an 8-year-old what he wanted to be when he grew up. He said McDonald's. I asked, "Oh, you want to work at McDonald's?" He replied, "No, I want to be McDonald's." He meant the actual building. I didn't have the heart to tell him that isn't realistically possible. Story 68. I work with kids who have aged out of state care. Recently, one child told me he couldn't pay for his own bus ticket. He receives an allowance of €300 a week with no bills, but he has subscriptions to pay for. He will have bills in a few months, and reality is going to hit him hard, I tell you. Story 69. My nephew, who has very light skin, was grounded by my sister for using a racial slur at home. He is 12, and apparently all his friends say it frequently. Story 70. Why do you hate men? Because I said Andrew Tate and Donald Trump are awful individuals. I do not hate all men at all. Story 71. The 15-year-old daughter of a friend once considered joining the army so she and her boyfriend could get married and live together with free housing. If you knew either of these kids, you would laugh at the idea of either of them in the army. Story 72. If you stick your finger in your ear and get wax on it and then put it in her vagina, she may react. However, she won't get pregnant from unprotected sex. Story 73. Many years ago, a 22-year-old overheard me and someone else discussing World War II, and we were occasionally criticizing the Nazis. She is one of those individuals who never learned much history, which is unfortunate. She interjected, "Hey, I'm German. Stop talking badly." My friend and I exchanged glances and thought, oh no, how do we navigate this situation? I don't believe she supports the Nazis, but I think her understanding only goes as far as equating Nazi with German. That's concerning. Story 74. If the corporations had been willing to give up 2 or 3 months' worth of profits, there would not have been a pandemic. Story 75. A young woman thought being a traditional wife sounded attractive because she could stay home and care for her children while her husband earned the money and paid the bills. Story 76. All the 20-year-old girls thinking they'll marry a 7-foot billionaire bodybuilder. Head on down to Applebee's and see what you find. Story 77. We had a tornado hit our area last year. My coworker was unaffected by the storm, but when they went on vacation, they told me it was nice to put all the destruction behind us. Sorry that others' misfortune has brought you so much misery. Story 78. She insisted that Generation Z came up with the term PLUR and found it cringy that Millennials and Generation X were using it. Sweetheart, the term PLUR was used before you were even a twinkle in your father's eye. Story 79. I want to go into management, said multiple 20-year-old interns who come in having no idea how any company's business gets done. Story 80. That it doesn't really matter who you vote for because it doesn't impact your daily life. Yes, he was a straight, white, cisgender man. Story 81. My daughter told me that I will be raising all her children while she and her wife live in my house and only help sometimes. Granted, she's 4, so I let it slide. Story 82. Years ago, a sorority girl in a study group said that non-traditional students with children and jobs complain too much about being busy. They don't know what busy is. We have events. Story 83. Said by me to my mom back in 1974. Me, Mom, I want a candy bar. Mom, I don't have any money. Me, then write a check. Story 84. My coworker, who is 25 years old and has never held a job for a year, with a background from a less reputable French engineering school, told my manager, who has 10 years of experience after earning a PhD and is an overall high performer, that it is unfair he earns more money than her. Story 85. Don't believe in artificial intelligence. You'll wake up tomorrow, and it will disappear. The same person also said, 60 miles of range on a gasoline car is good. He also stated, don't buy an electric car. Its battery would just explode. Story 86. When I was 17, I went through a hippie phase and told my parents I would be happy living in a tent, basically homeless. In my mind, I pictured peace, no bills, happiness, and no worries. A cringe now. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for sticking through all my phases. There were a lot. Story 87. I don't understand why September 11th was such a significant event. We have to learn about it in school, but I don't see why it is so important. Story 88. My mom once told me that she would have taken me more seriously if I were taller. I still don't know how to process that. Story 89. I was a teaching assistant for my biology and anatomy teacher in high school. He was close to retiring, and I asked him what the dumbest question he had ever been asked was. He mentioned that a freshman girl on the first day of biology class, whose brother had graduated as valedictorian the previous year, asked if black people have black skeletons. She was not kidding. Story 90. Poor is just a mindset. This statement comes from a young person who was born into wealth but consistently emphasizes that it is all about working hard and believing in your dreams. Story 91. She doesn't understand that I am a busy person. I have important things to do. A 6-year-old is complaining about his teacher giving too much homework, which was just one color by numbers page, and he had a full week to complete it. Story 92. I had a college-aged friend tell me one day that minorities can't be racist because they are the minority and aren't in a position of power. She was a social justice advocate and was majoring in social work. Story 93. We discussed the French Revolution and how, although Marie Antoinette never actually said it, the phrase "let them eat cake" represented the significant wealth gap between the aristocracy and the common people. Guy's response: I don't understand. What's wrong with that? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.